Let's talk about what's called a top slug control or a top stock control, also sometimes called a jog shuffle. This is what it looks like. I'll give the cards a overhand shuffle like this. I can continue shuffling in the deck this way as long as I want to. And despite all of these shuffles, not only is the ace of spades on top, but so is the 2, the 3, the 4, 5, the 6, the 7, the 8, 9, the 10, the jack, the queen, and the king. It's a full control, in this case, of 13 cards. The rest of the deck, however, was being mixed. You can control slightly more than 13 cards with this technique even. So how is this done? Well, I'll put the spades back on the top of the deck, and I'll use them just to show that the top portion of the deck really was kept intact. It was not mixed. So this is an overhand shuffle technique where you start with the cards in left-hand dealing position, and then as we discussed, you regrip them in end grip. Thumb at the back, 3 fingers at the front all together, finger curled on top. Now with the left hand, you regrip between the thumb and 4 fingers, and you turn the deck up like this, and you're functionally gripping the cards in an end grip from this side, face up. But instead of being vertical like this, the cards are tilted this way. So when you put the deck in your hand, you can use these fingers to kind of pull the cards over and tilt them like this. So thumb is at the back, middle finger is here. These fingers can either be at the side or just rest, and my index finger is at the top. Step 1, I'm going to pull off a block of cards. Now it needs to be a block that contains more than 13 cards. So actually, why don't I turn those 13 cards face up so we can keep track of them in the shuffles. So I need to pull off more than 13 cards, in this case, or a top block of cards. So this block contains, okay, more than 13 cards, so that's fine. But again, less than half the deck. Now, we talked earlier about how to run cards. Now, before we get to the running cards, I should mention one other thing. How these cards are held. Well, my index finger is at the front, my pinky is at the back, and the cards are resting on these fingers. Now notice they're not held in the hand in functionally a dealing grip. This edge of the cards is actually at the crease of my fingers like this. The cards are just resting and balancing. I'm not holding them in place. The reason for that is that when I go to take more cards, I don't want these cards to be up like this and get in the way and interfere with the positions of these fingers. By staying down here and resting, they're completely out of the way as I continue to shuffle. Okay, so you've pulled off a block of more than 13 cards. Now, with the left thumb, you're going to run a card. We talked about running cards earlier, so instead of putting the thumb at the top, you put it here, and just by friction, one card will come off. This time, we won't run the card like this. We take our right hand, and we shift it backwards like this, and now I run a card. So notice that this card is farther backwards than these. This is called an in-jog. When you're starting, it is okay to in-jog the card for literally a third or half of its length. Make the in-jog as big as you need for now, and later on we'll work on making it smaller. One other thing, notice how my pinky is contacting the face of the in-jog card, which in this case happens to be a jack of hearts, but it doesn't matter what card it is. My pinky contacting the card just helps hold it in place by friction. But aside from that, it's pretty much just resting there. Now I bring my hand back forward, and I'm just going to shuffle off other groups of cards. But notice that even though I'm shuffling here, the in-jog is still here, right? So I've in-jogged a card, and where that card is in-jogged, I should say, is right above all of the spades. That means, so I've just finished the overhand shuffle, and the cards are in this hand here, held again with the pinky here, the index finger at the front, and balancing on these fingers. Now, I'm going to regrip the deck again in my right hand for an overhand shuffle, but here's what happens. The pad of my right thumb pushes on this card, and by pushing on that card and then pushing in, a gap opens up, and my right thumb holds a break at the gap. In other words, it's holding a break right above all the spades. But of course, you don't show them this angle. You hold the cards like this for an overhand shuffle. Now, you shuffle off groups of cards, chopping off groups of cards, holding them in the same way until you get near the break. And when you get near the break, you just bring the thumb up to the edge, and you pull off everything above the break, and then throw the rest on top. And the 13 spades are still on top of the deck. So let's do that again, this time with the spades face down. So I start in dealing position, I go to end grip. I regrip between the thumb and the 4 fingers, and I grip the cards for an overhand shuffle, remembering to slant them this way or bevel them this way. My left thumb pulls off more than 13 cards in this case. If you were just controlling, say, the 4 aces, you'd only have to make sure you pulled off more than 4 cards. But in this case, I'm controlling 13 cards, so I have to make sure I pull off more than 13. Again, these are held with the index finger here, the pinky here, and they're resting on these fingers. They are not held in the hand like this. They're held at the crease of the fingers where they meet the palm. So they're in this position. I now shift my right hand backward and I in-jog this card. And now I bring the hand back forward and I start to shuffle. Now I'm going to add one layer of complexity that makes this technique much more deceptive. When I now shuffle off groups of cards, the first group will go in line with the block of cards here. In other words, it will go here, right? So now I just have my in-jog here. But if I keep shuffling cards in that aligned with the rest of the deck, then I just have this big jog sticking out. There's nothing covering it up. So here's what I do. Then I shift my hand back to where I did for running that one card. And then I chop off another block of cards. And then I go forward and chop off a block, and then back and chop off a block and forward. So it's almost like I'm in-jogging these blocks of cards, but I don't care about the position of those in-jogs. They're just covering up the in-jog card here. So it just looks like a messy overhand shuffle. This doesn't in any way affect or make it more difficult for me to push up on the in-jog here, and then push and square all of those cards up and get a break here. And again, my break now is above all the spades, the ace through the king. So with my break here, I've now regripped the deck for an overhand shuffle. I now pull off blocks of cards. I'll show the exposed angle again. Like this, I'll pull off blocks of cards until I get here. I pull off all the other cards and drop the rest on top. And if you do this correctly, all 13 spades will still be on top. Now let's talk about one more variation. The 13 spades are still on top, and I'll demonstrate this variation now. So I give the cards an overhand shuffle like this, and then I give the deck some cuts like this. And of course, those 13 spades are all still on top. I don't need to show you all of them this time. Here's the only difference. I do the same thing. I grip for an overhand shuffle, pull off a block of cards, in-jog one card by running it, and then come back out to this position, and then alternate between in-jogged and not in-jogged blocks of cards. So here's my in-jog, but now I'm not going to immediately get the break again. Instead, again, my pinky's still on the in-jog card to help keep it in place. With my right hand, I now regrip the deck, not the in-jog part, but the deck like this between my thumb and fingers. So the in-jogged cards stay in-jogged. I regrip the deck and I turn it this way. And now I simply grip the deck in dealing position, right? But putting it in dealing position doesn't affect these in-jog cards in any way. Now I do the same thing as before, but from this side, where my thumb comes in, pushes up, pulls up on all the in-jog cards, and then squares the cards. So I get a thumb break, and then I transfer that to a left fourth finger break. Now, with my right hand, I come over an end grip, and I take off maybe a quarter of the deck, and then another quarter of the deck, and then when I get close to the break, I cut off all the cards above the break, and then put these on top. And that brings all the spades back to the top of the deck. So I'll do that one more time. I grip the deck for an overhand shuffle, chop off a block larger than 13, in-jog one card, and then alternate between in-jogging and not in-jogging cards. I regrip, put it in dealing position, so there's my in-jog. I push up on the in-jogged card to get a break, and then I transfer it to the left fourth finger, and then I cut small piles of cards to the table until I get to my break. Here's my break. And then these all go on top, and I have kept all 13 spades on top of the deck.